Lisa Carter had never seen anything like the plants on Nexus Prime. The 16-year-old girl from Denver spent her days in the botanical research wing of the massive space station, watching alien flowers that glowed in colors she had no names for. Some plants moved like animals, reaching toward her with curious tendrils when she walked past their containers. Others sang in frequencies that made her teeth vibrate in a pleasant way. She had been on the station for 6 months now as part of Earth's first youth cultural exchange program. The Galactic Council had selected her from thousands of applicants because of her work with endangered plants back home. Her teachers said she had a gift for making things grow, even plants that experts had given up on. The aliens on the station had grown to love Lisa's enthusiasm. She asked endless questions about their worlds and their plants. The crystalline Thessians taught her how to speak to mineral-based organisms. The gaseous void dancers showed her plants that lived in empty space, feeding on cosmic radiation. Even the grumpy hegemony representatives had warmed to her cheerful presence over the months. Today was different, though. Today was the ceremony of joining, where new species were officially welcomed into the Galactic Council. The whole station buzzed with activity as diplomats from across the galaxy gathered in the Grand Assembly Hall. Lisa had been invited to attend as a representative of Earth's younger generation. She wore her best dress, the blue one her mother had bought her before the trip. In her hands, she carried a small potted plant from Earth, a simple daisy that she planned to present as a gift during the ceremony. The council members had told her it would be a nice gesture to show Earth's peaceful intentions. The Grand Assembly Hall was enormous, with a ceiling that opened to show the stars outside. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species filled the space. Lisa recognized some of them from her months on the station, but many were strangers with forms she had never imagined. Some looked like walking trees, others like living clouds of light. A few appeared to be made entirely of metal and crystal. Ambassador Jake Murphy from Earth guided Lisa to her seat near the front of the hall. He was a kind man in his 50s who had taken care of her like a father during her stay. He pointed out important figures as they took their places on the raised platform at the center of the room. The Valdris representatives looked like tall, elegant elves with silver skin and eyes like stars. The hegemony delegation resembled giant insects with elaborate shells decorated in intricate patterns. At the center of it all sat the Council of Elders, ancient beings who had guided galactic civilization for thousands of years. Lisa felt excited to be part of such an important event. She had read about the ceremony of joining in her studies back on Earth. It only happened once every few decades when a new species proved themselves worthy of council membership. Today, a species called the Korathi were being welcomed into the galactic community. The ceremony began with speeches in dozens of different languages. Translation devices allowed everyone to understand the words, but Lisa enjoyed listening to the musical sounds of alien voices. The Thessians communicated through harmonic resonances that reminded her of church bells. The void dancers spoke in whispers that seemed to come from everywhere at once. When the formal presentations ended, there was a break for refreshments and informal socializing. Lisa followed Ambassador Murphy toward the reception area, still carrying her potted daisy. The crowd was thick with beings moving in all directions. Lisa tried to step around a group of Thessian delegates when someone bumped into her from behind. She stumbled forward, her small pot flying from her hands. The daisy and its soil scattered across the polished floor, and the pot shattered against something hard. She looked up to see that the pot had struck Zixtar, one of the most important hegemony representatives. The broken pottery had scratched. His elaborate shell and potting soil clung to the intricate patterns carved into his exoskeleton. Some of the ceremonial acid that hegemony officials used to keep their shells bright had spilled from a small container at his side, creating dark stains across his chest. Lisa immediately dropped to her knees to gather the scattered pieces of her gift. Tears filled her eyes as she tried to save the broken daisy, its white petals now brown and wilted. She looked up at Zixtar with genuine sorrow in her young face. "I am so sorry," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I did not mean to bump into you. Please forgive me." But Zixtar's compound eyes blazed with fury. His mandibles clicked together, in the way that meant extreme anger among his people. The ceremonial acid on his shell was supposed to stay pure during important ceremonies, and now it was mixed with alien dirt and plant matter. "Insult," he hissed in the common tongue. "Deliberate insult to the hegemony. This human child has defiled sacred ceremonial markings with her primitive plant refuse." Ambassador Murphy rushed forward, his hands raised in a peaceful gesture. Other diplomats gathered around them, murmuring in various languages as they tried to understand what had happened. The cheerful mood of the ceremony began to shift into something darker. "Please, Representative Zixtar," Murphy said carefully. "This was clearly an accident. The child meant no disrespect. She was simply excited to participate in today's ceremony." But the damage was done. Zixtar's declaration of insult had been heard by representatives from across the galaxy. In hegemony culture, ceremonial defilement was considered one of the gravest offenses possible. Other species began to whisper among themselves, some nodding in agreement that the incident looked suspicious. Lisa remained on her knees, still trying to save her ruined daisy. She had no idea that her simple accident had just set in motion events that would change the galaxy forever. The emergency session of the United Nations had been called at 3 a.m. Washington time. President Helen Torres sat at the head of the long table in the secure briefing room, her face pale as she watched the recorded footage from Nexus Prime for the third time. Around her, the most powerful leaders on Earth struggled to process what they had just witnessed. The execution had been broadcast live across the galaxy. Lisa Carter, a 16-year-old girl from Denver, had been strapped to a Valdris execution device, while representatives from dozens of species watched. The Council had declared her death necessary to maintain order and respect among the younger species of the galaxy. Secretary of Defense Ryan Blake closed his laptop with shaking hands. Admiral Kate Sullivan of the Global Defense Fleet stared at the wall with eyes that burned with barely controlled rage. The other officials around the table wore expressions of shock and disbelief. "They killed a child," President Torres said quietly. "They killed a child for spilling dirt on an alien shell." The footage had shown Lisa's last moments. Even facing death, she had maintained the gentle nature that had made her so beloved on the station. Her final words, translated into dozens of languages, had been a request to tell her mother that she was trying to help the sick plants grow better. Dr. Nathan Pierce, head of the Terran Research Division, stood up from his seat at the far end of the table. He was a thin man in his 60s with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many secrets over the years. In his hands, he carried a thick folder marked with classification levels that most of the people in the room had never seen before. "Before we discuss our response," Dr. Pierce said carefully, "there are things you need to know about our true capabilities, things that have been hidden from the galaxy since first contact 50 years ago." He opened the folder and spread photographs across the table. The images showed massive installations hidden beneath Earth's surface, ships that looked nothing like the crude vessels the galaxy knew about, and technology that seemed to bend reality itself. "The fusion drives on our public ships are actually controlled versions of singularity engines," Dr. Pierce explained. "Our quantum computers are simplified interfaces for systems that can manipulate the basic laws of physics. Every piece of technology we have shown the galaxy has been deliberately limited to appear primitive." Admiral Sullivan leaned forward in her chair. She had suspected that Earth's military had secrets, but nothing like this. The photographs showed weapons that could tear holes in space and ships that existed in multiple dimensions at once. Why? President Torres asked. Why hide our real technology? Dr. Pierce pulled out another set of documents. These showed detailed intelligence reports on every major species in the galaxy, complete with military assessments and psychological profiles of their leaders. Because we needed time to study them, he said. Every human who left Earth in the past 50 years has been part of an intelligence operation. Our diplomats, traders, scientists, and exchange students have all been gathering information on alien technologies, military capabilities, and political structures. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Lisa Carter had not just been a student studying alien plants. She had been part of a vast network that had been mapping the galaxy's weaknesses for decades. Captain Alex Stone of the exploration vessel New Horizon received his emergency recall orders while conducting surveys in the Vega system. Like every other human ship in the galaxy, he had been operating under standing instructions to gather intelligence while maintaining the illusion of primitive Earth technology. His ship looked like a simple research vessel to alien observers, but hidden beneath its hull were sensors that could penetrate any known shielding and weapons that existed in folded space, until needed. Captain Stone had spent 3 years mapping hegemony fleet positions while pretending to study stellar phenomena. All ships are to return to Earth immediately, came the coded message from Admiral Sullivan. Operation Looking Glass is now active. Reveal nothing to alien observers. Across the galaxy, human installations began their coordinated withdrawal. Research stations that had been monitoring alien communications for years shut down their operations. Trade vessels that had been mapping, supply routes, and military installations started their journey home. Cultural exchange students like Lisa packed their belongings, unaware that they had been part of the greatest intelligence operation in galactic history. The Galactic Council initially dismissed the human withdrawal as cowardice. Earth's primitive species was clearly frightened by the demonstration of Council justice. Some species even laughed at the idea that humans might pose any threat to the established galactic order. Prime Minister Owen Clark of the European Federation joined President Torres in an unprecedented global broadcast. Standing together in the United Nations General Assembly, they addressed not just Earth, but every human facility in the galaxy. The Galactic Council has 72 hours to surrender Zixtar and every judge who participated in the murder of Lisa Carter, President Torres announced. They have 72 hours to formally apologize for this act of barbarism against an innocent child. Prime Minister Clark stepped forward to deliver the second part of the ultimatum. His voice was calm, but his words carried a weight that made veteran diplomats around the galaxy pause in their dismissive laughter. If these conditions are not met, he said, Earth will demonstrate why our species survived long enough to reach the stars. The Galactic Council and every species that participated in this atrocity will face complete erasure from existence. The galaxy's reaction was swift and predictable. The Valdris Empire issued statements about maintaining order among primitive species. The hegemony declared that Earth's threats only proved their point about human barbarism. Dozens of other species voiced support for the Council's actions. But in the hidden facilities beneath Earth's surface, Dr. Pierce was activating systems that had been dormant for decades. Deep space monitoring stations came online, revealing the true extent of human surveillance capabilities. Ships that had been hiding in the outer system moved into position. Scientists who had been studying alien biology for 50 years began preparing weapons designed specifically for each species' unique vulnerabilities. The galaxy had made a fatal mistake. They had assumed that humanity's gentle nature and primitive technology meant they were weak. They had never considered that a species capable of producing children like Lisa Carter might also be capable of protecting them with absolutely ruthless efficiency. Admiral Sullivan stood before a holographic display showing the positions of every major fleet in the galaxy. Human intelligence had tracked their movements for decades, recording their patrol patterns and mapping their defensive positions. No alien military force could move without Earth knowing about it within hours. "They killed our child," she said. To her staff officers, they broadcast her death as entertainment for the galaxy. Now they will learn what happens when you threaten humanity's young. The countdown had begun. In 72 hours, the galaxy would discover whether Earth's threats were empty bluster or something far more terrifying. Deep in their hidden facilities, human scientists made final preparations for technologies that would redefine what was possible in warfare. Dr. Maria Santos had spent 30 years studying alien biology, while the galaxy believed she was just another human scientist trying to catch up with superior alien knowledge. In reality, she had been documenting the weaknesses and vulnerabilities of every major species for Earth's classified defense files. Now she sat in her laboratory, uploading decades of secret research to every major news network in human space. The files she released painted a picture that would have shocked the galaxy. If they had been paying attention to human media, every diplomatic mission, every trade expedition, every cultural exchange had been part of a massive intelligence-gathering operation. Human students like Lisa Carter had been equipped with sensors so advanced that they could map alien biology, down to the cellular level while appearing to be simple recording devices. The Thessians appear to be made of living crystal, Dr. Santos said in her recorded statement, but their molecular structure has a resonance frequency that can be disrupted with precise sonic attacks. The Void Dancers exist as energy beings, but they require specific quantum field alignments to maintain cohesion. The hegemony's exoskeletons provide excellent protection against conventional weapons, but they conduct certain types of radiation in ways that would be fatal to the organisms. Inside, Lieutenant Commander Sam Rodriguez had been stationed at Luna Base Omega for 7 years, telling his family that he worked in mineral extraction. The facility was indeed hidden inside what appeared to be a mining operation, but its real purpose was far more sophisticated. Luna Base Omega housed the most advanced surveillance network ever created, capable of monitoring communications across half the galaxy in real time. The base's quantum listening arrays had been intercepting alien transmissions since the day after first contact. Every military communication, every diplomatic message, every private conversation between council members had been recorded and analyzed by human intelligence. The galaxy's leaders had no secrets from Earth. Rodriguez activated Project Looking Glass at exactly 0600 Earth Standard Time, 48 hours before the ultimatum deadline. Across the lunar surface, disguised antenna arrays began broadcasting on frequencies that the galaxy had never imagined could be used for communication. Within minutes, every hidden human facility in the galaxy was connected through an instantaneous communication network that bypassed all known methods of detection. The Valdris Empire had always been proud of their quantum encryption technology. They believed their military communications were completely secure, protected by mathematical principles that would take lesser species millions of years to understand. They had no idea that human mathematicians had broken their encryption 37 years ago, just 6 months after first contact. Dr. Pierce stood in the war room beneath the Colorado mountains, watching as displays showed the real-time positions of every Valdris fleet in the galaxy. Their patrol routes, supply schedules, and defensive positions were as familiar to Earth's military as their own installations. Human analysts had been tracking Valdris movements for so long that they could predict fleet deployments weeks in advance. The hegemony's secret weapons research facilities had been under constant observation for decades. What they believed were hidden laboratories on remote moons were actually well-documented sites in Earth's intelligence files. Human agents had infiltrated their research programs so thoroughly that Earth possessed blueprints for weapons the hegemony had not even finished designing. Captain Tony Walsh commanded one of Earth's actual military vessels, hidden in the Kuiper, built along with the rest of humanity's real space fleet. His ship looked nothing like the crude exploration vessels that the galaxy knew about. It was a sleek predator designed with technology reverse-engineered from 100 different species and improved by human innovation. The ship could phase in and out of normal space, becoming effectively invisible to any known detection method. Its weapons existed in folded dimensions until the moment they were needed, then materialized with enough force to crack planets. The hull was made from materials that could regenerate damage and adapt to any attack. Admiral Rick Barnes surveyed the hidden fleet from his command ship, a massive vessel that served as the nerve center for Earth's real military. Around him, hundreds of similar ships waited in the darkness beyond Pluto, their crews trained for a war that the galaxy could not imagine. These were not the peaceful explorers that alien species had met, but soldiers whose ancestors had survived. The worst conflicts in human history. The fleet represented 50 years of careful preparation. Every ship had been built using technologies stolen from alien visitors and improved by human engineering. Earth's scientists had taken the best ideas from dozens of species and combined them into weapons systems that surpassed anything the galaxy had ever seen. On Nexus Prime, the very station where Lisa Carter had died, council members continued their normal routines. They reviewed trade agreements, discussed territorial disputes, and planned future expansion into unexplored regions of space. They had no idea that every conversation was being recorded by human surveillance devices hidden throughout the station. The Council's emergency bunkers, their hidden fleet positions, their secret weapons stockpiles, their private communication networks, all of it was known to Earth's intelligence services. Human agents had spent decades mapping every aspect of galactic civilization while maintaining the perfect disguise of primitive newcomers seeking knowledge. Zixtar himself was meeting with other hegemony officials in what they believed was a secure location deep within their embassy on Nexus Prime. They discussed plans to use Lisa's execution as an example to keep other young species in line. They had no idea that human listening devices had been recording their conversations since the day the embassy opened. Dr. Santos released the final batch of classified files just 12 hours before the ultimatum deadline. These documents revealed the true scope of human technological advancement. Faster-than-light travel that did not require the clumsy jump gates used by galactic civilization. Matter conversion systems that could transform any element into any other element. Weapons that could alter the fundamental laws of physics in localized areas. The galaxy's leaders finally began to pay attention to Earth's threats, but by then, it was too late. Human ships were already moving into position around key strategic targets. The surveillance network that had been passively observing for 50 years suddenly became active, jamming alien communications and feeding false information to their sensors. Admiral Sullivan stood before a holographic map showing the entire galaxy. Red markers indicated the positions of every major alien fleet, every important government facility, every strategic resource. Blue markers showed human assets, and there were far more of them than any alien species had imagined possible. Phase 1 is complete, she announced to her staff. All intelligence assets are in position. All military units are ready for deployment. The aliens have 6 hours to meet our demands. She paused, looking at a photograph of Lisa Carter that had been placed at the center of the command table. The young girl smiled up from the picture, holding one of her beloved plants. If they refuse, Admiral Sullivan continued, we will show them what happens when a species that has been hiding its true nature for 50 years finally decides to stop pretending to be weak. The countdown continued. In a few hours, the galaxy would learn whether humanity's gentle exterior concealed something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The answer would determine whether galactic civilization continued to exist, or became a cautionary tale about the price of harming human children. The 72-hour deadline passed at exactly midnight Earth Standard Time. The Galactic Council had spent those 3 days debating whether to take Earth's threats seriously, ultimately deciding that a primitive species with crude technology posed no real danger to galactic civilization. Their response came in the form of an official declaration branding Earth as a rogue system that needed to be quarantined for the safety of other species. President Torres received the Council's rejection. while standing in the Oval Office with her senior advisors. She read the message twice before setting it down on her desk with steady hands. The aliens had chosen to treat Lisa Carter's murder as justified and Earth's demands as the ravings of an inferior species. Dr. Amy Carter appeared on every major news network exactly 1 hour after the deadline passed. Lisa's mother stood behind, a simple podium in the gymnasium of her daughter's old high school in Denver, the same place where Lisa had first learned about plants and dreamed of helping alien species understand Earth's biology. "My daughter died trying to help alien plants grow better," Dr. Carter said, her voice calm despite the tears streaming down her face. "She spent 6 months on that station learning about their worlds, sharing our knowledge, and building friendships with beings from across the galaxy. They killed her for being kind, for having the gentle nature that made her want to help everything she touched grow and flourish." She paused, looking directly into the camera with eyes that held a mother's grief and a mother's rage. "I want every species in the galaxy to understand something about humans," she continued. "We are patient people. We are kind people. We love our children more than our own lives, and we teach them to be generous and helpful to everyone they meet. But we are also the species that survived ice ages, plagues, and wars that turned our continents into glass. Show them what we do to creatures who hurt our children." Operation Swan Song began 30 minutes later. Human ships appeared simultaneously at 17 different locations across the galaxy, not near military installations or government centers, but at the personal homes and private estates of every being who had participated in Lisa's trial. Zixtars. Private Moon orbited a gas giant in the Hegemony home system, a paradise world where he raised his offspring according to traditional Hegemony customs. The moon housed elaborate gardens where young Hegemony learned to tend the ceremonial plants that were central to their culture. It was considered one of the most beautiful places in their territory. Captain Walsh's ship materialized in space, directly above the moon's surface. The vessel remained invisible to Hegemony sensors as it deployed a weapon that had never been tested on anything larger than asteroids in Earth's outer system. The device created a perfect sphere of altered space-time around its target. Zixtar's moon simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed in an explosion, not torn apart by gravitational forces, but erased from reality so completely that space itself forgot it had ever been there. The gravitational effects on the nearby gas giant adjusted instantly, as if the moon had never existed in the first place. Security recordings from across the galaxy showed the same phenomenon occurring at 16 other locations. Judge Korth Van's family estate on the Valdris homeworld disappeared along with its elegant crystal gardens and priceless art collections. Prosecutor Velnari's private research station became a perfectly spherical void in space. Elder Council, Member Thexmore's retirement compound on a peaceful agricultural world simply wasn't there anymore. In each case, the erasure was surgically precise. Neighboring properties remained untouched, their owners unharmed, but suddenly aware that something important had vanished from their world. The missing locations left perfect spheres of empty space that violated every known law of physics. The galaxy's military forces scrambled to respond, but they had no idea what they were fighting against. Human ships appeared and disappeared without triggering any detection systems. The weapons being used left no energy signatures, no residual radiation, nothing that could be analyzed or countered. Commander Sandra Lee led a strike team that materialized inside the Valdris Council chambers during an emergency session called to address the attacks. The human soldiers simply walked through the chamber's walls as if they were made of air, their equipment allowing them to exist partially outside normal space. The Valdris guards fired their most advanced weapons at the intruders, but the energy beams passed harmlessly through the humans without affecting them. The soldiers made no threatening moves, carried no visible weapons, and spoke in calm, polite voices that somehow reached every being in the chamber, despite using no translation devices. "We represent the people of Earth," Commander Lee announced, to the terrified council members. "We come bearing a message from the parents of Lisa Carter, the child your justice system murdered for the crime of being helpful and kind." She placed a simple tablet on the central speaking platform. The device projected a holographic list that filled the air above the assembled delegates. Thousands of names appeared in the common galactic script, each one accompanied by detailed coordinates and personal information. "These are the names of every judge, prosecutor, guard, and official who participated in the trial and execution of our child," Commander Lee explained. "Next to each name, you will find the current location of their families, their children, their most precious loved ones." The implications became clear as the council members read through the list. Earth knew where everyone they cared about was located. The coordinates were accurate down to the meter, updated in real time as family members moved around their homes and workplaces. "You have one opportunity to surrender yourselves for trial under Earth law," Commander Lee continued. "If you refuse, if you attempt to hide, if you try to protect yourselves with military force, then your families will simply stop existing. Not killed, not injured, but erased from reality as completely as if they had never been born." Elder Thexmore, whose own family compound had already been erased, stood on shaking legs to address the human soldiers. His species had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, commanding respect and fear from dozens of younger races. "You cannot threaten the Council," he said, his voice cracking with age and terror. "We are the lawful government of this galaxy. We maintain order among the primitive species. Your threats are acts of terrorism against civilized society." Commander Lee looked at him with the patience of a teacher explaining something simple to a slow child. "Elder Thexmore," she said gently, "your grandson Kexton is currently playing in the garden behind your daughter's house on Valdris Prime. He is 7 years old according to your species' aging system. He enjoys collecting the glowing stones that grow near your homeworld's polar regions." The elder's face went pale as the human demonstrated knowledge that should have been impossible to obtain. "We know everything about everyone you care about," Commander Lee continued. "We have been watching your families for decades, learning their habits, mapping their daily routines, protecting them from threats they never knew existed. Our surveillance network has kept your children safe from criminals and terrorists for 50 years. She paused, letting the weight of that revelation sink in. "We protected your families because that is what decent people do," she said. "Now you will discover what we do to people who threaten ours." The human soldiers vanished as suddenly as they had appeared, leaving behind only the tablet with its list of names and coordinates. The council chamber fell silent except for the sound of several delegates quietly weeping as they contemplated the impossible choice before them. Fleet Admiral Korthvon of the Valdris Empire had commanded galactic military forces for over 2 centuries. He had fought in dozens of conflicts, conquered primitive worlds, and maintained order among the younger species through superior firepower and technological advantage. He had never faced an enemy that could erase entire locations from existence without leaving any trace of how it was accomplished. The Council's emergency war session lasted 18 hours as representatives from 40 different species debated their response to Earth's impossible demands. Some advocated for immediate surrender, terrified by the surgical precision of the human attacks. Others demanded military action, refusing to bow to what they saw as terrorist tactics from a primitive species. Admiral Korthvan ended the debate by presenting his battle plan. The largest military force in galactic history would be assembled and sent to Earth's solar system. 3,000 ships from across the galaxy, including planet killers and reality-warping weapons that had never been used in actual combat. If Earth wanted a war, they would face the combined might of galactic civilization. "These humans hide behind unknown technology," Admiral Korthvon declared to the assembled delegates. "But they are still a single species confined to one star system. We represent the accumulated military power of thousands of worlds. No matter how advanced their weapons, they cannot stand against such overwhelming force. The mobilization took 6 days. Warships from every corner of the galaxy converged on rally points throughout Valdris space. The fleet that assembled was beyond anything seen since the ancient wars that had established the current galactic order. Dreadnoughts the size of cities, carriers that could deploy entire armies, weapons platforms that could crack the crust of a planet. Captain Elena Rodriguez watched the alien fleets approach from her position in the asteroid belt. Her ship's sensors tracked every vessel as they entered the solar system, automatically categorizing their weapons and defensive systems. The intelligence data that Earth had gathered over 50 years made each ship as familiar as if humans had built them. The alien armada moved in perfect formation toward Earth, confident in their overwhelming numerical advantage. 3,000 ships against whatever primitive force humanity could muster seemed like acceptable odds to their commanders. They expected to find desperate defenders clustered around their homeworld, ready to make a futile last stand. Instead, they found Admiral Kate Sullivan waiting alone in a single ship no larger than a council patrol craft. Her vessel hung motionless in space near Jupiter's orbit, making no attempt to hide or flee from the approaching fleet. To alien sensors, it appeared to be constructed from the same primitive materials as other human ships they had observed. Admiral Korthvan studied the lone human vessel from his command ship's bridge. His tactical officers reported that their sensors detected only basic fusion drives and simple defensive systems. The ship carried no visible weapons beyond what might be expected from a minor exploration vessel. It seemed like an insulting gesture from a species about to be exterminated. Sullivan's transmission began broadcasting on all frequencies as the alien fleet closed to weapons range. The signal reached every ship in the armada simultaneously, somehow bypassing their communication security without triggering any alarms. "I am Admiral Kate Sullivan of the Terran Defense Force," her voice said calmly. "You have chosen to respond to our legitimate demands for justice with military force. You could have simply apologized for murdering an innocent child and handed over the criminals responsible. Instead, you have decided to wage war against a species that has spent a century learning every weakness of every race in this galaxy." Admiral Korthvan ordered his fleet to open fire. Energy beams that could melt continents lanced out from thousands of ships, all focused on Sullivan's tiny vessel. Missiles that could destroy moons streaked through space toward their target. Reality-warping weapons activated, creating distortions in space-time that should have torn apart anything within light years. Sullivan's ship didn't activate shields, didn't attempt evasive maneuvers, didn't even appear to notice the incoming attacks. The massive energy barrage simply passed through her vessel as if it didn't exist, the beams continuing into empty space without affecting anything. The missiles flew through the ship's hull and out the other side without detonating. The reality-warping weapons had no target to lock onto. "Let me show you why humans are called the most dangerous game," Sullivan continued, her transmission uninterrupted by the futile attack. "We don't destroy enemy fleets because destruction is wasteful. We prefer conversion." Admiral Korthvan felt his command ship shudder as something fundamental changed in its basic systems. Control panels that had responded to Valdris neural interfaces for centuries suddenly displayed human text. Navigation systems that had been programmed for galactic standard coordinates began showing Earth measurements. Weapons that had been designed to serve Valdris military doctrine started following human tactical protocols. Across the entire fleet, the same transformation was occurring. Ships that had served dozens of different species for hundreds of years were becoming human vessels. The crews remained alive and unharmed at their stations, but their ships no longer obeyed their commands. Every system from life support to main engines now responded only to signals from Admiral Sullivan's modest patrol craft. Captain Elena Rodriguez emerged from the asteroid belt along with the rest of Earth's actual fleet. Hundreds of ships that had been hiding throughout the solar system dropped their camouflage and revealed themselves to the alien sensors. Each vessel displayed technology that made the converted fleet look primitive by comparison. The human ships didn't look like the crude exploration vessels that the galaxy was familiar with. These were predators designed for war, their hulls flowing like liquid metal as they adapted to changing tactical situations. Weapons systems phased in and out of visible space, existing in folded dimensions until needed. Defensive fields that bent light around them made accurate targeting impossible. Admiral Korth Von tried desperately to regain control of his flagship, but his neural interface had been completely severed from the ship's systems. Emergency protocols failed to activate. Manual overrides responded only to human authorization codes. Even the simple task of opening communication channels required permission from the strange human technology that had infected every system. "Your fleet now serves Earth," Sullivan explained to the helpless alien commanders. "Your crews are welcome to remain aboard as passengers, or they can transfer to the evacuation ships we're providing. But these vessels will not be returning to your home systems under alien command." Dr. Pierce's voice joined the transmission from his laboratory beneath the Colorado mountains. His words were broadcast not just to the captured fleet, but to every inhabited world in the galaxy. "This is Dr. Nathan Pierce, director of the Terran Research Division," he announced. "I want to address some misconceptions that the galaxy seems to have about humanity. We are not actually native to this dimension. Earth's population consists of refugees from a parallel universe where we fought and won a war against entities that your current civilization would consider gods. The revelation sent shockwaves through galactic intelligence services that were monitoring the transmission. Every piece of human technology they had observed, every diplomatic contact they had recorded, every assumption they had made about Earth's capabilities was suddenly thrown into question. Every human technology you have seen has been deliberately reduced to appear primitive," Dr. Pierce continued. "Our fusion drives are controlled versions of engines that can manipulate fundamental forces. Our quantum computers are simplified interfaces for systems that treat the laws of physics as programmable software. We have been pretending to be a young species while possessing the military capabilities of cosmic apex predators." Admiral Sullivan's ship began to change as the galaxy watched. The simple patrol craft expanded and transformed, revealing itself to be a command vessel of staggering complexity. Sections of the hull opened to display weapon systems that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The ship's true size became apparent as it unfolded structures that had been compressed into pocket dimensions. "The demonstration is now complete," Sullivan announced. "Your combined fleet represents the greatest military force your civilization has ever assembled. It is now under human control, and it will remain so. We suggest that your governments consider this when formulating their next response to our demands for justice." Dr. Pierce stood before the assembled leaders of Earth in the deepest secure facility on the planet. The room had been carved from solid rock miles beneath the surface, shielded from every known form of detection or surveillance. Around the curved walls, holographic displays showed the current status of every human operation across the galaxy. "The final phase requires your authorization," he said to President Torres and the other heads of state. "What we are about to demonstrate will fundamentally alter the balance of power in this galaxy. Once we cross this line, there will be no returning to the old relationship between Earth and galactic civilization." President Torres looked at the photograph of Lisa Carter that had been placed at the center of the conference table. The young girl's bright smile seemed to provide a stark contrast to the weapons of impossible destruction that were being prepared in her name. "They had every opportunity to choose a peaceful resolution," the president said quietly. "They chose to treat the murder of our child as justified. They chose to respond to our demand for justice with military force. Show them what humanity is capable of when we stop pretending to be weak." The authorization codes were entered simultaneously by leaders from every major nation on Earth. Deep beneath the surface, machines that had been dormant for decades began to activate. Systems that drew their power from the planet's core itself came online, their energy signatures carefully masked to appear like natural geological activity. Dr. Pierce activated the final stage of Operation Swan Song from his laboratory. The quantum manipulation engines that had been hidden beneath Earth's major cities synchronized their output, creating a field effect that reached across the galaxy faster than light could travel. Reality itself became malleable within the influence of human technology. The Galactic Council simply ceased to exist, not destroyed in battle, not overthrown by revolution, but erased from the timeline so completely that history adjusted to forget they had ever ruled anything. Government buildings became empty spaces that no one could quite remember the purpose of. Laws and treaties that had shaped galactic civilization for thousands of years became blank documents that scholars couldn't explain. Zixtar found himself standing in what had been the hegemony embassy on Nexus Prime, but was now just an empty room with no clear purpose. His memories of serving as a council representative faded like dreams upon waking. The ceremonial markings on his shell, which had once indicated his high rank in galactic government, became simple decorative patterns with no political significance. Fleet. Admiral Korthvon woke up in his quarters aboard what his records indicated was a captured Valdris vessel, now serving in the human fleet. His memories of commanding galactic military forces became vague recollections of a career serving under human authority. The ship's computer showed decades of service records indicating that Valdris forces had always been part of Earth's defensive alliance. Across the galaxy, billions of beings experienced the same gradual adjustment of memory and history. The Galactic Council's government structure vanished from existence so completely that most species couldn't remember what their previous political system had been. Ancient recordings of council sessions became blank files that archivists assumed had been damaged by some technical malfunction. In place of the council, humanity established the Terran Concordat with a governing philosophy that was both simple and absolute. Every species in the galaxy was welcome to self-governance and peaceful development. Trade, cultural exchange, and scientific cooperation were encouraged between all civilizations. But any act of violence against human civilians would result in the complete erasure of the responsible parties from the timeline. The new galactic order came with demonstrations that left no doubt about humanity's capabilities. Species that had previously been considered major military powers discovered that their weapons were primitive toys compared to human technology. Civilizations that had ruled star systems for millennia found themselves operating under human oversight, their continued existence dependent on maintaining peaceful relationships with Earth's colonies. Captain Sandra Martinez led the first human colony ship to arrive at the world designated New Eden, a planet in what had previously been hegemony space. The colonists included children Lisa's age, excited to explore alien ecosystems and help local plant life adapt to changing environmental conditions. The young colonists worked under protection protocols that made their safety absolute. Orbital. Defense platforms that existed partially outside normal space made any attack on the colony impossible. Surveillance systems that monitored the entire star system ensured that no threat could approach without human forces knowing about it hours in advance. But the most effective protection came from the galaxy's new understanding of what happened to beings who threatened human children. The lesson of Lisa Carter's death had been taught in the most comprehensive way possible. Every species now knew that humans were patient, kind, and helpful by nature, but utterly without mercy toward anyone who harmed their young. Dr. Amy Carter visited the New Eden colony 6 months after its establishment. She walked through gardens where human children worked alongside young members of half a dozen alien species, all of them learning to help plants from different worlds grow together in harmony. It was exactly the kind of place Lisa would have loved to visit. "The children don't know," Dr. Carter said to Captain Martinez as they watched the youngsters share their knowledge with alien students. They don't know that their safety is protected by weapons that could erase star systems. They just see friends from other worlds who want to learn about Earth plants. Captain Martinez nodded, watching her own daughter explain photosynthesis to a young Thessian whose crystalline structure sparkled in the alien sunlight. "That's how it should be," she said. "The children should be free to be curious and helpful and kind. The galaxy will learn to love them the way we do, because the alternative is to never have existed at all." The transformation was already visible across galactic civilization. Species that had once competed for resources now cooperated on scientific projects. Military conflicts that had raged for centuries suddenly ended as former enemies discovered mutual interests in peaceful development. Trade routes that had been controlled by powerful empires became open to all species under human supervision. Museums on Earth displayed artifacts from the old galactic order, though most visitors couldn't quite remember what governmental system the exhibits were supposed to represent. The Galactic Council had become a historical footnote, a failed experiment in interstellar politics that had been replaced by humanity's more effective approach to maintaining peace. Children across the galaxy learned about the importance of kindness and cooperation from human teachers who seemed to possess an unlimited capacity for patience and understanding. But they also learned the fundamental rule of the new galactic order from stories that parents told in hushed voices. Humans protected their young with powers that could unmake reality itself. Lisa Carter's name became known throughout the galaxy, not as a victim, but as the catalyst for a new age of peace. Schools on 1,000 worlds taught children about the human girl who had died trying to help alien plants grow, and how her death had led to the creation of a civilization where such tragedies could never happen again. The galaxy had learned the most important lesson about humanity. They were indeed the most dangerous game, not because they sought conquest or domination, but because they would go to literally any length to protect their children. And in a universe where human children could grow up safely among the stars, helping alien ecosystems flourish with their gentle enthusiasm, everyone was free to discover just how wonderful the galaxy could become when guided by beings who valued kindness above all else.